And we've had enlightening conversations since Monday. We focused on the economy on Monday. We did some related governance and transparency issues and continued with the anti-corruption subjects. Look, and today, after looking at security on Wednesday, we're here. And we have Peter Patiante. He's a regular contributor on the show, but we pulled him from his base on the campus of the University of Cape because he's right here. He is with the think tank Institute for Education Studies. Thank you for joining me, Peter.
Thank you.
We'll also be joined by Anis Hafa, but we've also decided to post a question on Facebook. Please make sure we'll put the question there for you to see, to know that it's real. So make sure you touch base with us on JoyNews on TV. On Facebook, we have related handles on Twitter, JoyNews on TV, and you can give us more of your messages through the tablet. So we have 054010-909. Of course, in the course of the conversation on education, 3 years under Nana Addo Akuffo Addo and his administration or government, how do you assess it, as a viewer, as somebody who is an ordinary Ghanaian, citizen, not a spectator, how we call it. But we're here to do the analysis. And please, before we go into all that, TUTAC, that's...
Technical Universities Teachers
great, they're on strike.
Of Ghana. Yes.
Now, I cited a letter by the National Labour Commission, calling them to the table to come in. But has it been a long-standing related issue?
Yes. Yes.
And how do we resolve it?
It's been on and off with them. I think the last ruling by the National Labour Commission was that government should go ahead and settle migrate them into the single spine. I think so, and then settle the arrears and everything that they had to. That according to NCT, National Council for Tertiary Education, they are saying that TUTAC did not submit the needed information or document for them to pay their members, and that is why they were not able to fulfill that particular promise. But we're thinking that this back and forth with some of the issues relating to the welfare of teachers, whether at the tertiary level or at the basic level, is something that we will have to take a very critical look at, especially in times where those who suffer when these things happen are the students and possibly parents. Irrespective of whatever the situation is, we think that the government or the body in charge of this issue should be able to do the right thing and let the teachers go back to the classroom. Just December, we had another one from NAGRAT, NAT, and then Concerned Teachers Association, and now this. And I wouldn't be surprised if very soon those are the training colleges also come up with the same complaints.
Okay. Again, let me tell you, we have a question on Facebook. So we'll take you to Facebook for you to see the question. And as you're watching us also, you go as part of the whole discussion and the mood. The post ultimately will close sometime as being tagged on alongside the question. And the question is Ghana's education system better administered under President Akuffo Addo? And there's a yes and no button for you to click. If I wasn't educated on IT related, I'll say to press. But we're here to press on these issues. So Nana Addo Akuffo Addo zoomed in straight away because since 2008 as a person, he had always believed that we needed to have a second cycle education system that would offer the leeway and the welfare components for students and parents who have the relief and the student to go to school for free. One, your own assessment about the initial policy implementation and subsequently how we have done so well with the policy itself. Okay,
so you're talking about the free SHS?
Exactly.
Good.
Exactly. So, because that was implemented the first year.
Yes. I think it's one of the best education policies that have ever happened in the history of educational policies in the country. We have to understand that the best investment that a country can ever make is to invest in education. But one thing we also have to understand is that investment in education takes a long time to yield returns. And that is why we need commitment and consistency in the delivery of the educational policies that we have. So introducing free SHS, holding it to the 3rd year, and hoping that it will run for a longer period of time is what we need as a country. The policy would always be assessed based on the thematic themes, thematic areas that were introduced when the policy was launched: the issue of accessibility, the issue of equity, and the issue of quality. And if you look at the 3 themes, as we always say, the free SHS has increased accessibility to most of the students who were not able to, or who would ordinarily not be able to access secondary education. So if you look at the statistics, you would see that the enrollment rates over the years have increased. And we are also not just interested in the enrollment rate, we have also looked at the completion rates at the GHS level and then the SHS level, and you can see that that is also improving. We're also interested in the gender parity ratio or rate, that is also increasing, or index, that is also increasing. So it means that the free SHS is a very good policy which we need to continue to sustain. Of course, in terms of equity, there are various issues when it comes to equity in education. You can talk of equity in learning, then you can talk of equity in terms of the finances, and maybe we'll talk about the financing issue.
We'll talk about the financing. Yeah, so ultimately that will be having the way forward, part of the discussion on free SHS. Okay,
so in terms of equity, in equity in learning, we might say that yes, it seems to.
And if you say equity, what exactly do you mean?
You know that we say that all hands are not equal. So what the free SHS sought to do is to make sure that all students receive the same level of education, irrespective of where you are coming from. And that is equity in learning.
As in parity.
Yes.
Everybody's at par.
Yes, that's equity in learning. Then we have equity in the finances, which we will talk about later. So in terms of equity in learning, now you see that students from various schools, and those in the villages, are now getting access to some of the first-class schools and other things. And every student is given the needed resources to undertake his or her education. And that you might say that as we go on, although there are challenges with some of the resources that the students need, as we go on, we might say that that is also a positive for the policy. In terms of quality, that is one area that we have to do a lot of work on. And when we implemented the policy, we came out to say that this is the time for us to start talking about quality. Because when you are pushing everybody into the school system, especially at the point where there is no break from GSS 3 and then SHS 1, then you would have to understand that whether the child fails or passes, he is going to continue education. So the kind of education that the child is receiving from the GHS should be at a level that would help him upgrade when he gets to the secondary school level. If it is bad, it means that you are pushing the bar to the secondary school level and he continues to the university.
You wait there. What's your own assessment? I'm asking this because you're coming from a think tank that does work on education, on the quality that we have at that basic level, from primary and then to GHS, that we have in the public schools, because we're linking that to parity, or what do you say?
Equality. Equity in learning.
Okay.
Quality in the basic level.
I love your exclamation.
Let me make this point. When it comes to Ghana, we have what we call inputs of quality education. These are things that have been given by the Ghana Education Service. And when you talk of inputs of quality education, we are looking at the availability of classrooms, what we call student-to-desk ratio, student-to-classroom ratio, student-to-teacher ratio. We are talking about student-to-textbook ratio, and all those things. Then these are inputs that are supposed, if they are available, then we are measuring up to quality of education. Then we come to output, and the output is what the students obtains after he or she have completed the education system. Now, if you look at our basic level, you would agree with me that we have had serious challenges with our basic education in Ghana, and anybody would agree with me. That is why most of us, when our kids are going to school, we take them to the private schools at the basic level. Most parents in Ghana would want their kids to.
Is it true that most parents What's the statistic? Is it in urban, peri-urban?
Yes,
okay.
in the urban centers, of course.
Because we have more students
even in the
public schools.
Yes, but even in the rural areas, those international schools attract. Because you see, one thing is that we are supposed to believe that basic education is free. I mean, at the primary level and the GHS. But people pay a lot of money to send their awards to international
irrespective
schools.
of which part of the country they are located.
Yes.
I see.
And that is a situation that we will have to look at, because if you walk to any public basic school now, you would agree with me that the kind of teaching that goes on there is not that kind of teaching that we would want for our kids. And normally we would wish that they upgrade in terms of the management and the supervision and other things that they provide.
Because those are the main problems. That's why
yes, at the basic level.
You as observers think we don't have the quality.
Yes, at the basic level, the problem is management supervision.
So as think tanks, your fear is that has translated into the assessment of the quality at the basic level, which could translate into whether we have qualitative students to go to SHS.
Exactly, because you see, the students are not going to break. And if you look at the new Pre-Tertiary Education Act, the students are not going to break. Now you enter KG, you go and you end at SHS 3.
If you say break means what?
I mean, when
no matter the grade you get.
Yes, you see, at first when you get to GSS 3, you break. I mean, they write BEC.
Oh, okay.
And
then the new one.
Yeah, the new one. The BEC, and then you have completed school, and then you continue to SHS. But now, if you look at the Pre-Tertiary Education Act that is in Parliament now, you continue from KG. You move to you move to SHS 3.
So we are going to have a continuous schooling system.
Exactly.
All called basic school.
Yes. Unless, of course, when you get 9 in English and then maths, then you will not be able to place in.
And 9 means that you have.
Yeah, you failed.
Poto.
Yes, in English and maths. Apart from that, you move on. What this means is that everybody, if you are able to get 8, assuming you get 8 in all the subjects, you still go to secondary school.
In the old system, 8 is what? Sorry, I'm old school. So 8 means, let's say you got. Because they used to do 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah,
so 8 means you got a 4.
Yeah, 8 means maybe something close to fail.
Yeah,
close
to fail.
Like
E, like an
like E. Yeah, E. But then you be able
8 means like an E.
Yes. But you
so
be able
get
to continue.
E.
Yes.
And you still go.
Exactly. You will go to secondary school. Now, that is the reason why we were thinking that a lot of support systems should be introduced alongside the free education system, because the level of learning of the kids at that level will never be the same. So if you have support system, what the Deputy Minister called interventions in the system, then you would be able to identify students in the class who are not pulling their weight, and then design these interventions and attend to them. According to the Deputy Minister, they are doing these things.
In the public schools?
In the public senior high. They do interventions, but it's not the kind of intervention that we would wish that they do. The kind of intervention that we wish they do is on individual basis. But this one, they put everybody together and they offer them extra tuition, which is not effective as one-on-one intervention.
So all these factors are the reasons why parents tend to make the choices, irrespective of where they find themselves, whether urban, peri-urban, or rural, or countryside Ghana, to send their children to private schools.
Yes, because
there fears the quality.
Yes, and if you talk to people now, you would realize that some of them have started complaining about the secondary education in terms of its quality, of which I think that we should hold on a little and then allow the policy to run its full course, so that we'll be able to speak to it. But then people are expressing fears that the quality at the secondary level
Are you saying that quality is now the quality question is unfounded?
Yes, because I told you that there are 2 things that we talk about when you look at quality: the inputs and then the outputs. So the inputs in terms of desks, textbooks, teachers, everything seems to be in place, because maybe we'll talk about double track too, because
no, we'll talk about
yes,
it.
because one of the things that double track did was to reduce class sizes. So in reducing class sizes, you are improving student to teacher ratio. The teachers attend to lesser students than previously.
That's an ideal situation.
Yes.
Have you spoken to the teachers? What have they been saying?
I've spoken to most of the teachers in terms of class sizes, and I've visited most of the schools.
No, yes.
In terms of the class sizes.
No. Class size, true.
Yes.
But the rationale for smaller class size is to have better appreciation, contacts, and all that.
Yes.
Are they getting that feel?
Well, the teachers seems to not get that particular feel. But the point is that a lot of things also depends on the teachers. Maybe as we go on with the conversation, because you see, it's a whole system that we are running. Okay, so if you used to have 80 students in a class, and now you are having like 30, your students are reduced by 50. You should be able to attend to the 30 students, learn their names one by one, make sure you monitor their learning, and then when you give them exercise, you'll be able to mark and follow their progress. And that is something that you don't need someone external to tell you. And that's why I say some of these things depend on the teacher. So if your class sizes are reducing, you will need to have a personal
Are the teachers complaining about the quality of the student they have? Since now, what do you call it? Is it wholesale you call it? Did you use the word wholesale?
No.
Okay, you didn't use that word.
They continue throughout.
It's continued.
Yeah, yes.
So, okay, are the teachers complaining about continuous students that they have in class who are a mixed bag, even though it's a smaller class, who perhaps they can't get the best out of?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
and that is why sometimes some people will come and talk about we still introducing the cutoff point, because they think that removing the cutoff point has allowed every student to move into the secondary school irrespective of the quality of that particular student. Whereas when the cutoff point was there, students were sieved based on your certain level of academic
so you
ability.
only get quality based on the cutoff point into certain schools.
That is when you are assuming that the only way that the student exhibits quality is through examination.
Which other ways do students exhibit quality in our system?
You know, there are certain students who learn later in their life. So the fact that he sits at BECE and gets a grade 30 does not mean that when he gets to SS, he would also fail at the end of the day. So
what's the percentage of students who get influenced by having good students around them?
On the average, I will not be able to give a percentage, but on the average,
there are studies that are indicating that.
Yes, you know, the student performance is always like a normal distribution. So there are a lot of brilliant students at the latter end here, and a lot of weak students at the latter end here, and the average students are in the middle. What our concentration as a nation has been on is our students who are in the middle, and then those who are doing well. So if you are in the school and you are not doing well at the latter part, most teachers will not pay. Yes, most teachers will not pay attention to you, and that is why we still continue to advocate that a lot of support systems should be in the system for the students so that they'll be able to.
As think tankers, the fears of one, and I'm going to divide the stakeholders into let's say three.
Okay.
The teachers on one hand, the parents, and the student themselves. Is because of our own precedent of implementing education reforms, in which there had been fears. There had been guinea pigs when we did the transition into the new system from the existing 7-year cycle that we had at secondary school level. Yeah. And we had guinea pigs that suffered for 3 years. Some of them still didn't get their life together up to now. And it's because of a poor implementation of a system. Is it not because of those reasons that's why those concerns are raised?
I agree with you. One of our challenges as a country in terms of not even only in education, in all sectors, have been policy implementation. And I always say that we should distinguish policy from policy implementation. The policies are good. Let me give you a typical example. If you take a critical look at the Professor Anna Mohammed's education reform, it was superb, very brilliant document that was produced. But then when it got to the time to implement it, what we were fixated with was the change in years from 3 to 4 years, and then the removal of, I think, a subject or something, the change in name from JSS to GHS. And we all lost track that the exit point for all students entering secondary school were 4, according to the document, that a child leaving secondary school can go into agriculture education, technical education, the general system of education, or can go into apprenticeship. These were things that were in the document, but then we ignored, and as a country, we decided to always, major in the minors, and that has been our bane. And I think that the issues raised by parents and other stakeholders are genuine. We have issues with implementation. We have issues with politicians interfering with policies. We have issues with people not allowing the policy to run their full course and review it to upgrade it. And because of that, our policies have never been able to yield the needed results that they have to.
Now, there are related concerns about financing, because they said it has a direct effect on the quality. I'm thinking, how does that relate to it?
Yeah, if financing in its totality would definitely have an effect on quality, because we talk of financing, then you are looking at providing needed infrastructure, resources, and everything, and all these things will be provided through the use of money, of course. So definitely. But what our problem with the policy have always been is that we are implementing what we call the wholesale financing model, whereby we are paying for everybody. And now I've stated that the free SHS's decision to implement this policy is a political decision and not an economic decision. Because if it is an economic decision, then you are looking at scarcity of resources, and you are looking at the best way to distribute your scarce resources in order to get the best out of it. But because it's a political promise, we have decided to implement it irrespective of the fact that a lot of us in the civil society sector have raised issues with whether we will be able to keep this true. Let me give you an example. Now, we are financing this through the oil money. Previously, we used almost, I think, 700 million to this. Now we are using almost something
billion.
Yes, 1 point something billion from the oil.
1.2.
Yes, 1.2, I think, billion from the oil sector, and then the rest is coming from. Now imagine a situation whereby the oil revenue is not coming in as it's supposed to come. How are we going to sustain this very important and brilliant policy? And that's why we have said that they are best models that have been implemented across the globe in terms of financing secondary education.
What are some of them?
You just have to do targeting. And when you say these people...
Like what means testing? Yes, how do you target?
Yes, when you say this, people keep saying that, oh, how do you get the data? But we have designed a model just this year during the National Education Week. We made a presentation to the stakeholders. We are saying that when students are entering SHS1, they fill a form. The form that they filled is filled by the parents. Now, the parents give all the information that they have about the child. You can have a section on that particular form that will collect information from the family background of that particular child, in terms
of whoever is looking after that.
Yes, and then give that information to the ministry whilst WAEC takes their data.
So
and then you compile that data. You can the number of siblings that they have. These are standard things that we always pick. The number of siblings that they have, the level of the employment that they are doing. I mean, their occupation. There are a lot of things.
I don't understand you. So how would you determine somebody's occupation and relate it to how much they earn, for example?
You see, when
somebody is a mason,
he's
a mason, but is really a contractor.
Yes, but you are not going to focus on only one variable. So you ask series of questions, and then you use, we have the UN poverty level and all those things. You can use that to determine the level that you would want to place. And of course, there are 3 groups of people that are in the secondary education system. There are those who can fully pay. There are those who can partially pay, and there are those who cannot pay at all. And that's why we have scholarship schemes. So you don't design a model whereby you put all of these people together. And that's why I keep saying that it's a political decision. It's not, it doesn't make economic sense that you put everybody together irrespective of their ability to pay, and then pay for them. You get the point? And that defeats the equity principle even
don't
with
you think that when that is implemented, people will still abuse it? Because we have scholarship that's supposed to be going to brilliant but needy students. It goes to rich children.
The inefficiencies in the system should not prevent us from doing what is right. Because you see, if we are able to save a little money from free SHS, we can push it into agriculture education. We can push it into preschool education. We can push it into TVET. We can push it into other sectors, even tertiary education. There are a lot of infrastructure challenges there. Agric education, a lot of challenges there. So if we are going to save a little from there, we can push it into these other areas that are suffering, and then help them also grow.
All right. And where you can also complement the conversation is also on Facebook and Twitter, and we've posted related questions in relation to our conversation on education under the Nana-Addo-led administration over the last 3 years. And it's part of the whole assessment we've been doing. We've transitioned into the 4th year. We did that on Tuesday, 7th of January. So we're having the last year of the first term and just doing some good assessment so far. It looks like the education conversation also is catching on. Please make sure that you touch base with us, add up to the comments also. Let us know what you think on social media. Let's make this conversation relevant. We're going to bring you what the policy intentions are for this administration, what so far has been projected. And when we come back, we're going to have renowned and experienced educationist Anis Hafa joining in the conversation. It's just to add up or complement enrich the conversation, bring more brains. So Peter is here, Anis Hafa is also coming in. And when Anis comes, I would want to ask him, based on his own assessment, how can we find a good financing model for free SHS? And looking at the new curricula that has been introduced, it's supposed to be, like the way we have it in Singapore, China, Dubai, some of the best that we've done so far. Is it what it really is? Stay with us. We'll be right back. And quality is quality. And you can see a lot of quality achievements in there. And that's Nana Addo Dankwa Akuffo Addo and his administration and their focus mainly on education that we're looking at. And we've been doing this the whole of the week. And what a way for us to keep climaxing the conversation with many other related sectors. And today it's on education. We've had Peter in the studio and Anis Hafa. He's a great man, an infantipim old boy, but also somebody who has practiced education, the administration of it in the United States, and consulted across board, is here to help his country as well, contributes meaningfully. I'm always a good recipient of his articles that he sends to his contacts each time that he does those publications, especially online and in the Daily Graphic. But we've also posted a related question on the conversation on Facebook, and we'll show what the slide is. So it's very simple. Okay, so far we've had 6,900 of you voting. We just don't know the answer yet. It will end in 22 hours. But before the conversation ends, we'll give you a sneak peek of what the percentage of the votes are. But right now, it's just a simple question. It says, is Ghana's education system better administered under President Akuffo Addo? Hashtag AM show. Easy peasy. But what also should be easy is the next question I'm posing to Anis Hafa. Anis Hafa, how do we finance free SHS? Because Peter had raised related issues about observation of you, the consultant, think tankers, about it looks like the finance model, etc. You think we have some of the best schemes around we can take a look at?
Yeah, I will tell you from my own experiences.
Probably from the US.
Yes, yes, okay. How the Americans manage it. You have to understand that in the US, primary education all the way up to senior high school is free across board. You know, except for early child development, from the first grade all the way to secondary education, where you transfer into university, it's all free. But the question, how do they do it? That is the question. Now, you know, Americans place a lot of emphasis on what they call property taxes. You know, so that every year you are billed a certain amount of money for the locality in which you live. Like where we lived, the money was split into two. You pay one the first half of the year, and you pay the balance the second half of the year. Now, this is what happens. What they would tell you is that, look, we're going to provide you with free education up to secondary level. You're going to have free library facilities. You're going to have free police protection. You're going to have roads and so on. But this is how you pay for these things. So it's solid.
Well spelled out.
It's all spelled out. But the issue is that they are good at collecting the taxes. Frankly, if you don't pay your property taxes, your house will be forfeit. You know, so we take it very seriously. And then they also
even if you finish paying your mortgage?
Whatever it is, you have to pay your taxes every year, property taxes. Now here, I think that same thing can work here. For example, I mean, if you look at the taxes, the property taxes that I pay, for example, living in Makati here, it's minimal. You know, and then
you mean you could have afforded more if it was just raised a little?
What they have to do is to value the houses and attach a certain percentage as taxes every year. So frankly, we are underpaying. But it's very important that we are able to absorb money into the system for promoting education in this country. That we don't have a choice but to do that, you know. And then also when you begin to look at how we're going to begin to, when we begin to see how education has to benefit the poorest of us. That's very important. I mean, from the work that I've done all the way into the north, the Mamprusi, Narigu area, my goodness, if you attach any amount of money for people to pay before they go to school, it's very difficult. Even their clothes, their lunches, and so on. So what I'm saying is this. We are in a transit right now. This is an experiment that is being done. And we want to begin to look at how we can bring in most people at the same time. So even when you begin to look at the dual system that we have now, you know, here, you know, I've used the system before that we call year-long schooling.
You mean the double track system?
The double track system. It's called the year-round schools. And what you have is that you have 4 months, 4 months, 2 months break, 4 months, and 2 months break. I mean, that was a system that I worked in with the Los Angeles Unified School District.
Is it the same thing you're seeing here?
Yeah, it's similar to it. You know,
is it
because
same or similar?
It's similar. We don't want the houses and the equipment to lie idle at any point in time. So people have to have the access to the buildings. They have to access to the equipment. They have to have access to the desks and so on. So that's how you begin to bring in a lot more people into the system. But you know, this is new. With any new system, we have to accept the apprehensions. It's natural. You know, I mean, ever since I was growing up in this country, we are used to a particular kind of system. Our parents who are used to it. But change cannot be forbidden. You know, I think that is the crux of the matter now. But we are in a transit system. We are experimenting with a system that has worked elsewhere, and it has to be made to work here as well.
One critical thing that Peter also made commentary about was a related conversation about basic education. And we have a new bill in Parliament, ultimately when passed, will become an act. And a curricula that we've just introduced from the last academic year, that's supposed to revolutionize the way we tend to do basic education. And the output or the produce would then be feeding the system we have for the second cycle level. How do you think quality and then the implementation of the policy will produce the best outputs for the free SHS as intended by the policy outcomes?
You know, that's an excellent question.
Thank you very much.
You know, this is the issue here. I've seen the pre-tertiary education framework, and frankly, that is one of the best systems that I've seen, because it encompasses what the best practices of the world are. Now, again, when you look at it from the point of view of the educational outcomes, that's very important. Now, when I was growing up in elementary school all the way to secondary school, all we did was to repeat information.
Where, in America?
No, I'm talking about here.
Oh, you grew up here?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I started class 1 in a village called Kwabrafoso, near Tutuka, Boise. And then from there, I migrated to St. Peter's School, Zongo Hill, Kumasi. And then from there, I went to Fanspin. And it was repetitive. You memorize the information, because information at the time was sacrosanct. So when you have it, you are privileged. But then we've come into a point in our lives in the 21st century. Having information is not enough. How do you apply the information so that it adds value to who you are as a human being, and hopefully it will manifest into what it is that we do in the community? And I'll tell you this. There are 3 key educational outcomes. Like, for all the education that you're getting, what is a product that you can produce with it? That's number 1. It's very important. Don't produce information for me anymore. Now, for all the information, the education that you're getting, what is a service that you can provide? What are the skills that you can provide in a service that will be of benefit to somebody else? Because that's how you develop entrepreneurs. And then lastly, an educational outcome for all the education that you get. What is a solution to a societal problem? See, this is the new terrain. You know, it's not chew, pour, pass, forget, or whatever it is. It's not repeated information, because I'll tell you this. This is the advent of the digital age. Every information under the sun is available on the internet. So why spend your time memorizing it? All you have to do is to input exactly what it is that you want, and it's there. Now that you have it, what are you going to do with it? This is the essence of the new framework for education in this country, starting from the class 1, all the way to the universities, all the way to secondary school, so that by the time you get into the university, they are not now telling you to find a solution to societal problem, because you've gone through the system already.
Peter, is that why my 10-year-old, turning 11, is coming to me to say, look, let me use a laptop, get access to the internet, and take a picture of Kwame Nkrumah, go to Wikipedia, and he cuts, paste, and does something and put it on a sheet, or, you know, and prints it out somewhere, forces me to go and print it out somewhere. Is that supposed to be the creative nature of creative learning, seeking information, and then it becomes part of you?
Yeah, so that is the essence of the new curriculum that have been introduced at the KG to primary 6, and they started
and your transition to GHS.
They started the GHS 1 to 3, and then I think the SHS one will also follow after that. So the document is very educative and important, and we think that if it is implemented as it is, and you see, as I keep saying, our issue has always been implementation. Our issue has always been the provision of resources to enable those who are supposed to do the implementation, implement it faithfully. And that is the very challenge that we keep having. For example, we're talking about digital literacy. You're talking about your kid having access to your laptop and all those things. But how many of our kids in Ghana are able to have access to some of these things that we are talking about? We had one of the, I think maybe we'll go through that, one of the promises in the manifesto. You know, they have 25 items under education, the MPP manifesto. One of them was free Wi-Fi for secondary schools and other things.
Oh, it was there?
Oh,
I haven't
yes.
taken cognizance.
Oh, yeah.
Free Wi-Fi where?
For secondary schools across the length and breadth of the country. How far have we gone with that? So there are practical challenges to which would make it difficult for us to realize the impact or the importance of the things that we have in the curriculum. We're hoping that, and that goes back to availability of money, you know, we're hoping that government will be able to provide all the needed resources so that the kids, irrespective of wherever they find themselves, will be able to benefit from the new curriculum as being implemented.
Now, it would mean that we need the needed complementary infrastructure to be able to produce a good output of an ideal document. That's problematic. Because from what, well, I may have Wi-Fi at home, and so my son could have access. What about somebody at Dominasi? Right. Or somebody at maybe Keta, or somebody in the suburb at Pankrono or somewhere else?
The plan is that everybody should have access to it. That is not the situation now. But I'll tell you this, from the training that I do for teachers across the country, on the basic telephone, on the
smartphone.
Phone, yeah.
Even some of the basic smartphones.
You can access information that will help you as a teacher to deliver. The kids might not necessarily have it, but the teachers have it. It makes life much easier.
Okay.
So the point is this, we are at a stage now where we can be more efficient with whatever resources that we have. Now, I mean, let's be blunt about this. Can you imagine having internet access from Accra all the way to the north? It's going to involve massive expenditure.
Which we don't have.
Which we don't have. But in the meantime, we have to make the best of what we have. So that, for example, you know, teachers can never be short of material to teach just because of that, just because of the access to the internet, you know. And
okay, so let's take it for example. If you're not able to print, then you can just, let's say, Google it and just show it around.
Yeah, you can show it around, or you can show it on the...
or project it somewhere.
They will not have a projector, but you can write the substance on the board for people to copy, you know. So then the other thing is this. Again, look at Ghana. We have almost every resource possible under the sun right here. So the time has come now where we are now directing ourselves to the resources that we have naturally, even without the internet. Let me give you a classic example. There was a project that I did in the Mampusi area, and then I realized that there was cotton blowing everywhere. In fact, it's become a nuisance because it got stuck to your windscreens and so on. But what can cotton be used for? Right at the school site. Now, in fact, I brought something to show you where now cotton can be used in the most remote areas to produce sanitary pads. That is STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So we have so much.
And all this is in the new curriculum. Or if our teachers are engineers, then they can do that.
That is the point.
But how do we make...
Go ahead.
How do we create the ingenuity then? It becomes a big question. No.
Look, I've been involved in the new framework, but as I speak to you, I'm still studying it. It's not something that you do over a week.
You're part of the people who put together the new policy.
Yeah, I've been quite influential somehow in parts of it, even in terms of the editing and so on. But the point is, I'm still studying it. It's a document that is going to take us a long time to really acquire. But in the meantime, it's substantive enough where the application should be in place, you know. But the point is this. Again, education is a journey. It's not a destination. So whoever thinks that I've been trained today, and therefore I'll be equipped for the rest of my life, I mean, you know, that we are short-circuited our own mindset. But it's a continuous process.
Before
you wanted to add something.
but that is the main reason why we have to get the basic infrastructure, because if you are not careful, we will keep widening the disparities between the people in the urban centers and those in the rural centers. I can tell you for sure that not all teachers have even network in their various basic schools in most rural parts of Ghana. So if you are thinking that we have a curriculum that enables the student to be creative and the teacher is supposed to go online and do one or two things, why is the teacher going to do that when there is no network in the school?
Why not?
So there's no network there.
Well,
so where is the teacher going to do that?
You may have traveled maybe sometime to a funeral where there's access, so you know your syllabus, you know your teaching guide, so you can Google the thing, and when you have, because now you can no. You see, that is why Mr. Anis Hafa is saying that we have to be ingenious or creative. So you can Google and put it offline, and when the teaching time comes, where you are at your teaching base, which has no access to all these connections, you can show it to the students.
I think my teachers would not be happy with you with this.
Well, I'm
example.
sorry.
But what we are thinking practically is that we can cluster some of the schools or the districts and start putting up infrastructure there, so that once in a week, children from each school in that particular cluster can have access to that particular infrastructure, access the internet, think about or look at some of the things that they have not seen before. Because you see, I'm particular about this digital thing that we keep hammering, because that is a very important tool in the life of the rural child. The child in Accra don't have that challenge, but that child and at the end of the day, they are writing the same exams. Okay, so if we really want to bridge that gap of disparity between the rural and then the urban child, then we need to put up some of this infrastructure to the doorsteps of these kids in the rural settings, so that they will be able to access it. We shouldn't say that we are now doing it so at least the next 2, 3, 4 years they should suffer. No, I don't think that is the way to go. And that is why we still say that it is not economically wise to push every money into secondary education when you know that you have other serious challenging issues with your education system, whereby you can put up some of these things, free some money, and then put out some of these things to help the kids in the other sectors of the...
I mean, if comprehensively, you do a summary of what the feedback is, and the feedback is not necessarily from political actors, I mean, from parents, etc. There seem to be this apprehension. Is it because there's not been properly a proper way of communicating the policy intentions, or perhaps the various stakeholders who are raising all these, including parents, students themselves, know the inherent problems in the environment and so are raising these issues, or we're just plain pessimistic people?
Well, I mean, I can identify with the issues.
You can. So he's not wrong. Okay.
Yeah, I can identify with some of the issues that they have. That there are places that are a lot more endowed than places in the rural areas. That's a fact that we have to deal with. But even that, there are portals where you don't necessarily have to hook into a regular internet facility, but the portals have every information under the sun that you need, so that it's accessed at the site without having the electricity and all of that. There's that technology there. You know, there's no problem. In fact, we just
where in Ghana?
Oh, right here. There was a program that we did somewhere in Tamale. You know, you don't have to necessarily use electricity, but the portal will give you any information that you want. But
you need
you've got to have
the
that.
complement. Yeah.
You've got to have that. I mean, you know, we are in a transit. You know, I mean, let's face it. This is like about 2 years ago. You know, it's going to take a little bit of time, but the foundations have been laid. But the important thing is that teachers have to see themselves as forever preparing themselves to add value to themselves every step of the way. I have a lot of experience, but I'll be honest with you. I'm studying now more than I've ever done in my life. I'll be 73 years in April.
You look good.
You know, but then the challenge is that things are changing so fast. I cannot sit, you know, back and think that I'm going to catch up with the developments in the world unless I rise to the occasion. That is what I'm telling all young people, all teachers, that look, make sure that you add value to yourself. Find any means necessary to add value to yourself. I mean, and then, frankly, let's look at our cultural practices. Look at the amount of money that we spend on funerals. People do that on their own volition. I mean, there was a dead body that I saw somewhere in a district where they mechanized a certain roller coaster where the dead body is being paraded everywhere. Now, my goodness, if we have all that ingenuity, why don't we pass it on to education? The amount of money that we spend that way, you know, so that we are not overly dependent in some entity that is going to give you everything that you need. These are the things that we have to do.
So people in America spend their own money on education. Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm talking about a funeral that I saw here in a village.
But you're relating it to expense, personal expense.
Exactly. You know, and the expense of it. That's one. The other thing too is this. It doesn't matter what internet facilities are available. People have to learn to read. And there has to be a cultural thing across the country. How many people do we have now in our system who do you see reading? So the issue was this. Reading is number one. And what I keep telling parents is that at any point in time, make sure there's a small desk and a small chair in a corner somewhere where your own kid can sit and concentrate. That is a parent's responsibility. You know, these are the things that we have to begin to understand. That the element of concentration is very important. How do you do X plus 1?
It doesn't take away the absence of the complementary infrastructure when the kids go to school after reading.
But what reading does, it opens your mind to possibilities. So that, frankly, in the new curriculum, what you're also looking at is what we call shared responsibility. There was a time where you sit, and every information that you get is from a teacher who is delivering content to you.
Who regurgitates
those days are gone. You know, next time we'll do a program and I can show you on video exactly how the new system is supposed to work. What it does, it empowers the human being to begin to understand that my life is in my own hands. I want to be a leader, but you start off being a leader in your own right, in terms of the habits that you have.
That's the policy intention.
That's there. It's all there. Look.
But when it comes to the implementation, it's fraught with difficulties.
Every application has its own challenges. But what I'm saying is this. The framework has been done. But the most important thing is that we want every student in this country to be a critical thinker. And what does a critical thinking, what does it mean? It means that you are, number one, you are adding value to who you are. That is your key responsibility. Number two, what is it that you're going to do with the education that you get it? These are the challenges that everybody has to come to grasp with, including parents.
All right, your last word on this? I've enjoyed the conversation, so we'll wrap up on what footnote, looking forward. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or if, let's say, Nana Addo is no more the president one day, how should we keep a free education system, but adequately financed and also well supported with a qualitative structure of teaching and impartation?
Well, there are 4 things I think the government is doing that is going to help the education system. They started with the teacher reforms, perfect. They introduced the new curriculum, which is also perfect, the free SHS, and then the 3 bills in Parliament, if they are able to pass through. These are things that will change the face of education in the country. And we hope that they get the needed support to do that. But then a lot of challenges are also negating the positives of these policies that the government is implementing. So we will keep on saying that there should be other ways to, one, finance the free SHS. We are proposing 2 things. Either we go by the normal secondary financing model, which is targeting, or the government decides to do an 80-20 day boarding policy, because the day component of the free SHS is lesser than the boarding component. So now if they still want to pay for everybody, then they should make sure that a lot of students are pushed into the day system, so that all that we are saying is that we need money for other areas in the education system. We need money for preschool. We have to get a lot of preschools coming up. Our agriculture education is collapsing. We are talking about 1 district, 1 factory. We are building factories. We are doing this. But our agriculture education in itself has collapsed in this country. We have issues with creative arts education. We have issues with technical and vocational education. And we need money to do all these things. So we cannot continue to push all our monies or resources into senior high school, whilst these other areas in education are suffering. Basic education is suffering. School feeding is suffering. A lot of challenges with that. So we have to embark on a policy that will enable us free some of this money to do other things.
Sorry, I only have a minute. Let me give a minute to you.
Right. You know, the other thing I want to add is that it's time to learn to decentralize education in the country, so that every district, every region takes responsibility for what it is that is very, the endowment that they have in this particular area. I've been talking about this for a while, especially when it comes to science education. You know, the way education is packaged in Accra doesn't have to be necessarily the way education is packaged along the riverbanks, along the lakes, or in some of the Sahel regions. These are
all part of the educational system?
Yeah, there has to be. No, but again, you know, he talks about acts in the parliament, they have to be clear. These are some of the stuff too. Because it will be very difficult for one entity in Accra to have an oversight responsibility all over the place.
So that's why decentralization
is very important.
Okay. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed the conversation. Anis Hafa is a known consultant, educationist. So, look, he has great experience in there. And also acquiring the experience as is going on is with a think tank, Institute of
Education Studies.
Peter Patti Anti, joining us straight from Cape Coast. Thank you very much. So you'll be going back. Yeah, Charlie, we wish you all the best in your journey. Okay, safe drive. But we also pose a question on Facebook. And the question was simple. Is Ghana's education system better administered under Akuffo Addo? Hashtag AM show. And 70% of you, 8,600 responders said this at the time that we refreshed. Okay, and we refreshed just a couple of minutes ago. So I'm sure over the post will close in 21 hours, but 73% are just not satisfied with the current state of education. Speaks volumes. And I guess we're just in a continuous improvement process. Well, next, we told you the Harmattan is here. You're feeling all the cold and the way people shake you, and sometimes you know they have the flu, so you're careful, etc. But what do you need to do? And that's what we're about to discuss: health with this weather in the Harmattan and all the cautions that you need to make as an ordinary Ghanaian. Stay with that. It promises to be exciting, I tell you.